FNN News Finfine News Network, and I am your host, Sibel. First up today, FNN News has obtained some original footage of the OLA's recent maneuvers. We have received reports of some more military actions here. First up, we have a video of a maneuver carried out against some Prosperity Party troops in the Fincha Valley of the Horoguduru Walaga. So I'm going to put up some of that footage here.
Ito kondrule laba. Ela woi ashi. Ela. Kerro.
So again, what you're seeing there is a maneuver carried out by OLA troops against some Prosperity Party troops in the Fincha Valley of the Horoguduru Walaga. And we also have some other original footage here. This footage is of the Oda Adola Brigade of the OLA taking control of the town of Jidola, which is located in the Guji zone. So I'm going to play that now for our viewers.
Injifannoo gootichi waraanni bilisummaa Oromoo galmeesse kana fakkaataa jechuudha. Godina waraana bilisummaa Oromoo Konyaa Gujii Bahaa Cibraa Odaa Adoolaa guyyaa kana galmeesse kana fakkaata. Uummanni Oromoo yoo inni gammachuu isaa akkasitti ibsatu jechuudha.
So again, what you're seeing there is the Oda Adola Brigade of the Oromo Liberation Army, which has been very successful in recent months, coming into the Jadola town, taking control of it. Jadola located in the Guji zone. And in other news today, we have received reports that OLF PR director Bate Orgesa is now in critical condition after he engaged in a hunger strike to protest his inhumane conditions of imprisonment by the Prosperity Party government. Now, FNN has reported on the condition of several of these jailed OLF leaders who have had to engage in hunger strikes to try to draw some attention to their imprisonment. Bate specifically has been jailed for more than 600 days without ever being allowed a trial in court. And he was first jailed after the assassination of popular Oromo musician and activist Hachalu Hundessa, which happened back in June of 2020, even though there has been no evidence to prove that he or any of the OLF leaders had any kind of involvement or connection to that murder. And in some other news on Oromo political prisoners, the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia recently sent an inquiry board to investigate the situation of Dawud Ibsa, who is the OLF chairman, who has been imprisoned also since the murder of Hachalu Hundessa. He was also in that group of OLF leaders that was initially imprisoned after that incident happened. So we'll put up this announcement, this statement coming out from the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia. So in this concluding report here, after they went and visited him where he's on house arrest, they found that he's been jailed in his home for almost a year, specifically since April 2nd of last year. And according to this report, the board was actually not able to enter his home at first, which was very securely guarded by a group of armed guards. Eventually, they were able to show their credentials, show that they were with a federal agency, and be granted entry to be able to speak with Dawud Ibsa. And after that happened, Dawud told them that security forces, almost a year ago when this first happened, had forcefully broken into his home, had physically assaulted him, and confiscated several of his belongings. So now that the board has come to this conclusion, they're demanding from the Federal Police Commission as well as the National Intelligence and Security Service that he be immediately released from his house arrest. And this came in response to a request that was received by the board from the OLF in May of last year, which was asking for an investigation into into the conditions of his imprisonment. There has again been no evidence to prove that he had any kind of connection to the death of Hachalu Hundessa, and he has been imprisoned without due process, without any kind of trial. And this originally came after the government put out a statement around the same time designating both the TPLF and the OLF as terrorist organizations. This statement was, of course, roundly rejected by the OLF. However, that was exactly when some of these arrests started to take place. So as Dawud remains under arrest, it's been nearly a year now since he was first arrested. And it's also been, of course, nearly a year the board has not made any kind of investigation. There's been essentially no federal investigations into why he has been held on house arrest, how it could have been allowed that security forces broke into his home, confiscated some of his belongings without basically receiving any kind of court mandate or anything. So many people are still asking why it took 11 months for this case to even be investigated. And moving on to some international news, the Ethiopian ambassador to Kenya has announced news that 139 Ethiopian migrants who had been detained for illegally entering Kenya have now been released. This was an announcement that was made by the ambassador, Meles Alem Tekeya, who said that those detainees were released from 6 different custody centers. Those custody centers include Kiambu, Gigiri, Pangani, Jogu, Buruburu, and Dandora. And all of these detainees have been reportedly sent home on a pardon grant. Of course, FNN has previously reported on some of the pretty deplorable conditions of Ethiopian migrants that we've seen in multiple other countries. And now these detainees, of course, being released and free to finally go back home. And in some other international news, the AU-EU summit in Brussels has concluded as African leaders have been reckoning with this very harsh international response we've seen to Russia's recent invasion of Ukraine. During a UN General Summit on Wednesday, a resolution was introduced that condemned the invasion and called for an immediate withdrawal of Russian forces from the country. Now, Prime Minister Abiy stayed neutral during that decision, and he did not vote on that. The office of the Prime Minister followed up after that decision and released a statement yesterday laying out the official, government Ethiopian position, which it said was calling for restraint. We'll put up the statement here, released by the Office of the Prime Minister, saying, as Ethiopia closely follows the developments in Europe with great caution, we urge all parties to exercise restraint in the Ukraine crisis. And it cited the civil war in Ethiopia that had raged for the past over a year, saying, quote, it is with this recent recollection of war still fresh for many Ethiopians that my government calls upon all parties involved to exercise maximum caution in engagement and refrain from further exacerbating a sensitive situation. So, of course, Ethiopia, one of several countries that remained neutral, chose not to vote on this resolution. Meanwhile, Eritrea, which we know has been one of Ethiopia's close allies, FNN has previously reported on this relationship, and Eritrean troops entering during the civil war, entering the borders of Ethiopia in order to essentially do the bidding of Prime Minister Abiy. So Eritrea was one of only 5 countries that voted against the resolution. Those other countries that voted against it were Belarus, North Korea, Syria, and of course Russia. And this stance, this supposedly neutral stance by Ethiopia, choosing not to take a position against the Russian invasion, comes after, during a ceremony in the capital of FNN, commemorating the 1896 Battle of Adwa and Ethiopia's defeat of Italian colonizers. A photographer for AFP News captured someone in the crowd waving the Russian flag. We'll put that up here. So it remains to be seen, of course. It seems like the government is trying to walk this fine line between supporting the Russian government and condemning their actions in this matter. Of course, FNN has previously reported on the important trade relationship that Ethiopia also maintains with Ukraine, especially in terms of edible goods such as wheat and grain, other cereals, very important to Ethiopia's economy, especially considering some of the food shortages that we're seeing. And so, looking at this move, this potentially might be an attempt to kind of walk that fine line between condemning these actions from the Russian government and, maintaining the potential for a trade relationship with Ukraine, depending on what happens in the future. And in some other international news, we are receiving some more details about a UN committee that was created to investigate alleged war crimes committed during the civil war in Ethiopia. Recently, a new member was appointed to join this task force, this committee. That is Fatou Bensouda from Gambia, who was previously serving as the chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court between 2012 and 2021. Has been appointed to participate in this investigation. That's along with some other newly appointed members, which include Kari Betty Murungi of Kenya and Stephen Ratner of the US. The committee now has 1 year beginning on the 17th of December of last year, so December 17th, 2021, to conduct this investigation into war crimes that allegedly happened during the Civil War. They also have the option to extend that time limit if there's some other things that they didn't have time to find, to make sure that they fully investigate all of the many allegations of war crimes that could have occurred during that conflict. And this committee, of course, was established after the UN Human Rights Office and Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission determined that there was the possibility that war crimes had been committed in this conflict. Of course, we here at FNN have done quite a bit of reporting about what has gone on in Oromia and Tigray in terms of the murder of civilians during this conflict, the government detaining large amounts of people in the capital of Finfinne, a lot of times based upon their ethnic identity, and kind of indiscriminate bombing that went on, mandated by the government during this conflict. So we'll continue to update our audience, of course, on the findings from this committee comes to, and whether those human rights violations are confirmed. So that is all the news today. Again, thanks to our audience for watching FNN News, Finfinne News Network, and I am your host, Sibel.